So as Mark pulls everything up, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. I'm really excited to be talking about this particular topic, building wealth through private lending, specifically because it's something I recently as an investor have started doing, and I'm helping a lot more investors do that by investing in different projects, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I'm really excited to talk with you guys and see who also has been doing this for a while and get a lot of your stories and feedback. So we'll get right into it. First, I want to introduce myself really quick. I'm Danielle Plesky-Brown. I am an investor agent with the CAZA Group and a member of GRID. And I specialize in working with investors in DC and Virginia, as well as New York. I invest myself, and I'm really excited to be here with you guys. Thanks so much. Mark.
Awesome.
Take it away.
Yeah. So I've got a new wing person here with Danielle. Awesome to have you. For those that come here frequently, I see a lot of familiar faces. Bobby is down there in the bottom left-hand corner, but Danielle, being a member of our team who, as she said, focuses a lot on investment, is going to participate more and more in these because she's got a ton of value. She'll be able to bring a lot of value to our members. So we want to get her more involved in that because she's already working with a lot of the investors that we know, doing a lot of cool things. So props back to you, Danielle. But for those who I don't already know, Mark Beckett here. Rob and I have been doing this for 12-ish plus years. So welcome back to those that we know. Welcome to those that we've seen here for the first time. And if you're here for the first time, thank you for joining us virtually or continuing to join us here online. We're looking forward to hopefully soon, fingers crossed, be back live and in person as soon as we can, because we really love being in a room with people, right? These meetings are the best when we can really talk back and forth and share information and hang out and network and make deals and talk shop. And that's when these are, I think, the most fun, but we still get a pretty good amount accomplished here, even online, but always with interaction. So please, if you're willing, leave cameras on. Feel free to leave mics on, jump in, interact, ask questions, raise your hand or just speak up and say, hey, we still want this to be as much of a back and forth interaction as we can possibly have. And so with that, again, I focus on the investment side, by the way, for those who don't already know, doing rehabs and construction. I also run CAZA Construction, our construction division that handles both our own renovations and some renovations for some of our clients and occasionally third party. Anybody ever needs construction assistance, feel free to reach out for that. And then with that, that's kind of who we are and what we're doing here. Feel free, by the way, also to drag your pointer down to the bottom of the screen where you should be able to pull up the chat box. If you want to chat, you can always do it there, post questions. Rob is actually here and will be helping us moderate, watching that chat box, letting us know if there's anybody that's got a question that's posted there that they want to have answered. And then that is also a place where you can introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what company you're with and what you're doing. And I don't know what our total count is. We might even be able to get anybody who's willing if they want. Yeah, we've got a reasonably small enough room. We can still try to keep this personal. How about it? Anybody interested in introducing themselves and saying hello?
Don't be shy.
Hey, my name's Rob Chevez. What's up? What's up? I see Lee in here. I see Chip in here. What's up, guys? Hey, Chip, good to see you, man. Long time no.
It's been a minute.
Right. One of the big goals here is in this new environment is making sure that we're still connecting all of you with each other because the powers of the network. I'm doing deals every day with people on these Zooms in this environment. And so make sure that you do that. I would say if use the chat box to literally list your info in here so that each of you can get each other's contact information and build your database, right? So Chip, I suspect you're still in the private hard money space. That's your wheelhouse, right? So, type your name in there, put your info. put your
Yep.
website in there, right? The whole idea is let's get to know each other. I know many of you, but use this platform to do it. And you could certainly, like Mark said, just introduce yourself real fast. But if you're not brave enough to introduce yourself verbally, do it in the chat, right? So go for it. So Chip, why don't you lead it off, man?
Sure. So I have been in the private lending space for years and years and years, but I have recently, with everything that's happened in COVID and the different changes in the private lending space, and I can elaborate on that because it creates an opportunity, which is why this meeting and the topic is so advantageous. I have a firm called 4SB Partners, and we exclusively work with individual private investors that make loans. So if you think of a wealthy real estate family, they have now cashed out of the real estate holdings. However, they're not going to take their money and hand it over to a wealth manager because they can't see, feel it, and touch it, and they know and understand real estate. And they will, in turn, make loans on real estate. They don't want to be out on site. They don't want to be swinging a hammer. They don't want to be dealing with all the challenges that you guys all know you encounter on a project site. But what they can do is evaluate real estate very, very quickly, make decisions, and get to yes. What most of you probably know is what happened in the industry is it became commoditized. So we have all of these big private lenders, and they would close loans on a warehouse line and they would sell it on the secondary market. So they were essentially underwriting loans for the use of another source that was in, say, California or New York. And the challenge is, if you are a borrower, you cut a deal with somebody here, and now your loan's been sold to California, and the rules have changed. So essentially, and particularly in COVID, COVID's a perfect example. Projects have taken longer and they've cost more through no fault of anybody. Well, now your resource out in California is saying, well, your project hasn't progressed. We're calling your loan through no fault of anyone's. So what I have tried to do is go back and say, when I started in the industry, there wasn't this secondary market. There wasn't all of these other factors. It was simply, I like the deal. I understand what the guy's trying to do, and I'm willing to write a check. So I call it putting the private back in private lending. So anyway, I'm anxious to hear what everybody else is trying to do and see how we can sort of work together.
So if I could say something, Rob. So Chip, I'm currently doing 6 rehabs simultaneously.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing some with 3 different hard money lenders.
Right.
And so I mean, obviously, there's more I can do. It just needs the right person. So do you run credit? Can you maybe, and I don't know, can you just tell us a little bit about like how it works? Let's say I have a deal right now for 420,000. ARV is 669.
Yep.
It's located in Riverdale, Maryland.
Yep.
How would you, what would you look for? The comps look good. Are you gonna, some lenders, if they just like the deal, they'll send you a term sheet, and we get going. Other lenders, I mean, the due diligence is crazy. I mean, it's gonna take like a week or so.
Yeah, the due diligence is not gonna be crazy. But
so Jad and Chip, let's do this real fast, right? Jad, we're gonna get to that, but let's go through real fast to keep format, right? Format being everybody just a quick little intro. So Jad, why don't you introduce yourself real fast, 20 seconds, and then we'll get these questions answered as we go through, because it'll, just keep the
no
momentum
problem. So my name is Jad Sarsour. I'm an active real estate investor. I'm currently doing 6 flips, 2 in Washington, DC, 1 in Marshall, 1 in Nokesville, 1 in Manassas. And there's more I just can't think of, but I'm doing them now currently, and I'm just here hopefully to learn about another hard money source and someone that I can hopefully scale up my business with.
Awesome, brother.
Cool. Yeah, and I think, Rob, maybe to your point, some of these things come up during the presentation about credit checks and underwriting and that kind of thing. So maybe that's probably a good point at which to kind of ask your questions about how that works.
And I will say, no presentation. We facilitate conversations, right? We're not presenting anything. We're facilitating the conversation. So, yeah, some of this stuff is just going to come up, but I want to make sure that we get those questions answered. And I want to make sure that you guys get to know each other too. So, Adrian, welcome, right? I see here, everybody can kind of read out. So this is great. Isaac, welcome. And I promise I'm going to shut up from here on out. You guys take it over.
You're fine.
Rob's night off, everybody.
Right. Look at him all casual.
Hopefully he doesn't have COVID.
Oh no!
Looks like he's in the bed.
He is.
I want to let other leaders lead, right?
He's just chilling. Who else wants to say hello? Lee, you're talking. Say hi.
Everyone, Lee Johnson, Value Investment Partners, ex-rehabber, ex-hard money guy, doing lots of multifamily these days. If you have a question, let me know. I'll put my details inside of the chat.
Is that your custom logo back there on your green screen?
Something like that.
So fancy. So fancy.
5R.
Nice.
And Mark, before we move on really quick, Lee, and I know it's one of the first times we have met, like in person, whatever that means now. I'm really excited for everyone else to know Grid is expanding. And one way that we're expanding is through our ambassador program. So for those of you that have an expertise and want a platform to help share with our community and each other and help others learn and grow, Lee's going to be doing that by being a Grid ambassador and helping us focus on all different types of specialty investing. So Lee, I'm really, really excited for you to be joining us. And please do reach out to him and pick his brain because he knows so much. And I'm really excited you're here today because you're going to teach us all a lot. The last time we did this, I learned so much just from you alone. So thanks for coming.
Great. Glad to know someone's out there listening.
Yes. Oh, they're both ears wide open.
Awesome. Who else would like to say hello?
Hi, my name's Kevin Yu. First time joining meeting like this. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm an investor in Northern Virginia area looking for properties to invest in. But other than that, I'm here. Thank you.
Great. Well, welcome. Nice to have you. Always like having new people in the room. This network gets bigger every day. The bigger we get, the more deals we do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. Anybody else want to say hey?
I'll say hi. Hey, it's Andy here.
Hey, Andy.
I've been going to Grid for a year now and came here with like zero knowledge, just had a little town home in Sterling. And then after I kind of connected with the people, I connected with Lee, for example, and then he says, gave me this book to read. And after I read that book, I went ahead and put that practice right into play. Bought my first, I guess, a primary house hack opportunity. And then from there, within a year, I bought actually another investment property. So I went from 0 to 3 cash flowing investment properties in 1 year. And it's all from the connections of this group right here.
Oh my gosh. Somebody send that man a check.
Boom!
Andy,
awesome, Andy,
how much did we pay you to say that?
About like 20 grand,
All right. Well, I'm not aware of any checks that we wrote. So anybody that is new or doesn't come very frequently, it literally like that. It be like that, guys. This is why we do this. We talk about what we're doing. People network, they meet other people in the room, and they do deals and they make money. So that's what this is. And like Rob said, it's really not about us trying to be a guru or give a presentation. We just talk about what we do, the way that we do it, and we meet people. And by meeting other people, hard money is a great discussion because I've met a lot of people that have funded a lot of our deals and have facilitated us being able to make a lot of money. This network has been great for us for just that very reason, and it will do that for you. So always good to hear that people are doing stuff and doing deals. Also a good time to mention the slide here that does say we are not lawyers and accountants, and we're not vetting anybody here for you. You're talking to people. Make sure you're always vetting anybody that you talk to, and make sure you know who it is that you're dealing with. But there are a lot of great people here that you will find that you can do business with. Anybody else want to say hello real quick? Or are we all just lurking? Are you all hopefully taking the boards off of your windows?
So far.
All right, well, let's do that real quick because we said we would. Who boarded up their windows in preparation for yesterday? No, that was interesting to see that was happening. Danielle, how was your voting experience? How did you vote this year?
How did I vote this year?
Yeah, how did you
No,
actually?
no.
Transition.
No. I'm sorry. Let me say
Online
over.
or in
Not when I
What is
say how
going
did you
on?
vote?
Mark Beckett, I said
Physically,
no
no.
politics.
Physically, how did you turn in your ballot? I do not want to know
Oh.
who you voted for. I want to know mechanically first
Yes.
that you did vote,
Absolutely. No
and then
problem
how physically did you
at all.
deliver your vote? I'm just curious.
So I had an absentee ballot that I fortunately live in Fairfax County, Virginia, and I actually live like a mile down the road from where I could manually drop it in one of the ballot bins. So I did just that.
Yep. Same for me. I got the absentee ballot, took it down to the government center. The only hangup was right as we were about to put the ballot in the box. The guy was like, "You here for Fairfax?" And I'm like, "What? No, take a thing." Oh, yeah. Like, what do you mean? He's like, "You're not Fairfax City." Like, no, we live in Reston. He's like, "Okay, this is the box." Apparently, Fairfax City people were going to the Fairfax County Government Center and trying to drop off their ballot. So he scared me for a second, but turns out I think I was in the right place. And I think we can talk this much politics. It seems like that type of activity, mail-in and absentee ballots, are probably going to decide this election. As of 10 minutes ago, before I came up and turned this thing on, it looked like Joe had won, or is being announced to probably win, a couple more states based on absentee ballots. That may well turn the tide of the election in states like Pennsylvania, which would probably turn the tide in the entire election. So without getting into the values part of the discussion on politics, I think there is going to be some change in some ways. It appears we may have a different president, but the same Congress as far as a breakdown goes and control of the two houses. So I guess then we have to try to figure out what that means and what that could mean and what that will mean for our businesses, and in particular for our investing. So I don't know what, Danielle, back to you again. What are your hot takes? What do you think? What's your opinion on what we're looking at?
So I think at the highest level, we are still going to every day continue to do real estate. 4 years ago, there was a change in power then, and we continued to do real estate. 4 years prior to that, well, really 8 years prior to that, there was a change in power. We all continued to do real estate. So what I would say, and maybe there's a naivete to this, is whatever you focus on expands. So whether you're pro or con a change is kind of irrelevant if that's what you're focusing on. If you're focusing on finding the other excuses to prevent you from doing more deals, then you're going to continue to focus on excuses or whatever that is. Could things pop up that will change the market, interest rates, things that are completely out of our control? Sure, probably. When? We don't know. How? We can make some assumptions and predictions, but I don't think we really know. But what we do know is today, interest rates are the lowest they've ever been in history, and to become an investor is even easier. And to be able to participate in groups like this, where you can connect with like-minded people that are all trying to do the same thing, that have different knowledges and different pieces and collaborate, that is still here. So what I'm trying to focus on, at least, is I'm looking for opportunities like that. And I just want to continue working with Grid and figuring out other ways to do deals.
There couldn't have been a better answer. Boom.
No, I like her.
That's right. That's
Lee,
right.
I like you too.
Yeah, that's a good
I would
answer.
Stay focused on making the money. You'll find an accountant who can, fill out the correct forms once you've made the money to hide it for you.
Yep.
Don't worry about all the stuff you can't control. What you can
Yes.
control are your choices, what you want to do, the way you want to make money, as long as it's legal.
Yeah.
And, as long as you focus on that, there's money to be made. People made money in 2008 and people made money in 2020.
Totally agree. I think
Yeah, let's
anybody
go.
who was paying attention would have to agree with that. So then it is just a matter of prognosticating what kind of market we're going into. That does have an impact on what kind of investing you might do or what you might be looking for or where the opportunities might be coming from. My guess, my opinion is that we're not going to see any massive changes in opportunities, in market activity, in pricing for the next at least 3 to 6 months. If everything changed and say I was totally wrong and all the other votes go towards the houses of Congress and president changing office, still won't be until January, won't start affecting changes to policy until sometime next year. So the market is still the market. Very in this area anyway, where most of us are operating. Very low inventory, still obviously very low rates. And since we run a large agency and we sell a lot of houses, I think we can report houses still selling, right?
The average days on market in Northern Virginia is between 4 and 6 days, depending on which county and specifically which area you're in. DC, it's about the same. And that's in new construction, because I focus on new construction. So I'm always helping, for those of you that are flippers, developers, and interested in that, that's what I'm looking at all the time. There are so many buyers for the price points, even in the higher price points. And that's a relative term for some, but like even over 1.5 million in Arlington, like that's considered an inexpensive home, that market, I don't think that's actually going to go down. It would take it would take something almost like double as catastrophic as 2008 to actually have a really big impact on this market, because like what you said, Mark, inventory is so low, so low, and buyer capacity and how many buyers are out there, their demand and their financial ability to purchase because interest rates are lower is so high. They're qualifying for the same monthly payment, but now they can buy more house because they're not spending as much in interest. So they're looking for newer construction. I think it would take quite a shift in the market. Like, I don't know how to calculate that, but it would be pretty large for it to.
Hey guys, isn't there like a offset that if there is a change in administration, you're going to have people who are looking to leave the area and people who are looking to come?
Of course.
Which would have an impact on the market.
That's part of the nature of this area, right? It's a transient area, and politics drives home ownership, and that does present opportunities for houses to sell. Another point, however, is while I think you're totally correct that at the middle market and even upper price points, not only do we not see any real big changes anytime soon in the costs of ownership, the availability of inventory, and the economic status of those buyers and sellers, I think we have to be aware that there is potential for some shift to happen for some people who are either farther down the economic ladder that are being more impacted by the pandemic, and then the few people who are in businesses that are more impacted by the pandemic who are feeling some stress. So Rob doesn't have to jump in, but you can if you want to, because I know you've had these conversations. And a quick shout out before you do to Rob, if you don't already do so, you probably ought to be on the Grid DMV Facebook page. Doesn't cost you anything. Sign up for it. You will see when Rob posts his occasional market updates like he did this week, talking about in the Reston area, condo volume and condo sales slowing. Rob, if you want to take 30 seconds to give us a recap on maybe what you had seen in the market in those lower priced or condo type properties, and maybe about that conversation that you had with a person that is having an impact, a financial impact, and a loan discussion.
Yeah, so I'll two things, and then we'll get to our topic, which is all about how you guys can become the bank, right? How you can build wealth by becoming the bank. And I'd love to get, a lot of interaction going between Chip and other people that have done this. And then I'm going to be off. But number one is, out of 154 active and coming soon listings in Reston, 96 were condos. There was only 10 single family homes on the market, and there was 50 townhomes. That is crazy, right? So it's a tale of two markets. You've got 96 condos, and I'm just seeing price drop, price drop, price drop, price drop, because I track all the data in that market. And then on the other side, you've got single family homes that are priced well, show well. Obviously, those are moving. But even in today's market, there was 22 properties in 5 days that had failed to sell. So 22 sellers wanted to sell, but they still failed to sell because they got some piece of the equation wrong when it came to pricing in relation to condition, location, and time of the year. So, it's a tale of two markets there. And so every market itself, Alexandria, Reston, Arlington, different parts of DC, there's different pockets doing different things and different product doing different things, right? So you've got to always look at that data. What I've noticed is I've been having lots of conversations with people that essentially have not made payments for the last 6 months because of COVID, right? And they essentially paused their payments to the banks, and then they're getting letters, and essentially they're saying, listen, you owe us $20,000 and it's all due by tomorrow, right? Or all due by the end of the month. And then they're picking up the phone and they're calling the bank again, and the bank's saying, okay, you can extend this another 6 months. So there'll be a segment of our population that will not have paid their mortgage for a year, right? And then the conversation is, okay, what are they going to do with that? Are they going to tack it onto the back of the loan, which is what the banks are saying that they're going to do? Some may not, right? And so it'll be interesting to see what happens as that starts occurring more and more and more, right?
Right.
And Chip, because you're close to what's happening probably, at the servicer level,
Yeah.
I mean, what are you hearing, right? What is the word on the street with you guys, right? Servicing these loans. What are you hearing?
So in relation to residential loans, the right thing to do is obviously to do right by the borrower. Particularly if they've been a good borrower for you, they ran into a pinch. If they have equity in the real estate, let's look back at that. There's a $350,000 debt. Property is worth $650,000 in Reston. That lender has no risk of losing a nickel of principal or interest, right? It's just how much of a stink do they want to make? They are going to run into a servicing challenge because they're not collecting interest. It's really the right thing for them to do is to do a modification, tack those payments on the end, and say, look, you've got 24 years left on your mortgage. The last payment is a balloon payment to include the deferment. That's the right thing to do. Now, the reality is there are other factors at play, right? There are other factors at play that may prevent that. And that comes down to who the servicer is, what's the given situation, and some of the underlying things that come behind the company itself. Because the company that's doing the servicing, they're under a certain amount of pressure to deliver that spread to the end user. So anyway, that's in the residential lending space. In the private lending space, the issue is most of these are short-term loans, and again, most of the loans got sold someplace. So let's say you did a fix and flip loan and you had a renovation schedule. You have a budget and a schedule, and that schedule is supposed to be 90 days. Well, in COVID, you couldn't get permits and everything took longer. And now the lender looks back and says, well, hang on a second. We're 6 months into the deal. You haven't taken a draw because you can't get your permits. We're going to call the loan for failure to progress. And that's coming out of somebody sitting at a desk in California, looking at a spreadsheet saying they haven't taken a draw. So this loan hasn't progressed. So we need to call it. Where the right thing to do, and look, if you're on this call, if you're going to be a lender, the right thing to do would be to go back and say, okay, what's my exposure in this real estate? Do I believe this person can deliver? And if I do an extension and or modification, what does that do to the security of the project? And if the answer is, I'm still in good shape, do right by your borrower. Because now the hardest thing for a lender to get is a good borrower. If you get one, you have to keep them. And if you do right by them, now, you know, even though you're not quote unquote partners, you really become a partner because you're in this together and you're working through it. And now their next deal, they're going to call you because they know you're going to stand by them versus saying, hey, you had a hiccup, we're calling your loan. And that throws everything into turmoil. One of the things you're seeing out there is, I call it lender fatigue. They've been with a borrower and they're hearing the same story again and again and again, and they're just tired of hearing it. So they're not calling the loan. That's where some of the opportunities happen out there in the market right now, where they already own the property, investor already bought it, they're doing a flip, they might be halfway through, they can't get it completed for permits or contractors or budget overruns or problems with draws, and they have to get out. So, you know, if you look at 100 of them, there might be 10 deals that are worth doing, but those 10 deals are really good. The others, they're over leveraged.
So all good points. Thank you for that. And I think the lesson to everybody else is you need to be active in communities like this, where you can get that kind of insight into what's going on from different people doing different things, from people who are lending, from people who are borrowing, people who are rehabbing, from people who are selling houses. It's never a bad idea to have a good network of people that you can check in with and call on and ask what's going on and what are they seeing. So another great use of an outlet and a network like this is to kind of keep your ears to the tracks of what's going on, right? So that's another aspect of kind of what we want to do here a little bit. So I guess that'll be it for politics and market chat. So far, everything pretty good. The world's still turning. Everything will still be here tomorrow and next week and next month and probably next year the same way it is now. And as Danielle said rightly, we will go on looking for deals, finding opportunities, and doing deals. So the opportunity tonight then is what to do with all your money. So we're going to start with a great premise tonight. You've got some money, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a lot of money, but you got more than you need for yourself right now. Did you know that you could take some of that excess money and lend it to your fellow investor, just like a bank would, with many of the same protections that any other bank might have, and help them do a deal and help you earn some money on your money? Danielle, you said, is this something you've gotten into? Have you been involved in loans on both the borrowing and lending side, right?
Yes, I actually on both sides of the coin. I've done both where my wife and we both have invested in projects through our self-directed IRAs. I happen to use equity trust, but there's a lot of different providers that are fantastic. But I've had really good experience personally with equity trust, but do your own due diligence on that. And it's been great. So basically the way it functioned for us is there's a couple different ways these deals get set up, or how you could collect interest or make money on your money, right? Because you're lending it out with the intention of making money on your money. So on a couple of different projects we've done, either we have lent our money for a guaranteed amount of interest, and that would be a flat rate amount of interest due as a balloon payment when the property we invested in this case, it was a flip property, but there's lots of different ways you can invest in different businesses, and Mark can go into detail about that. We had invested in a flip project and we earned a guaranteed interest rate on that. We've done investments where we earned an accrued amount of interest. So the percentage of interest was set, but we accrued it over time. And we found that to be a better way to protect us on one transaction that happened to be a longer term flip. We thought we'd make a little bit more money doing it that way. And I've also seen it where you can lend your money and then get a flat fee. So say, you lend $100,000 and for the the grace of doing that, you would like a guaranteed 20 grand when they pay you back, and then they have to pay you back within a year. That's another way I've seen it set up, but there's lots of ways to do it. Those are just kind of some of the common ones I've seen. But Mark, what else have you seen?
Well, so the first thing you mentioned, I think is worth talking a little bit about, that you're using a self-directed IRA. That is most people's outside of their businesses, their access to the most free cash to invest in things, right? You've either got stocks or you own other valuables, you do other things. Outside of that, people's individual retirement accounts are where they keep the majority of their cash. Using that company that you mentioned, Equity Trust, which I also have an account with, again, not vouching for them in particular, but they are one of the bigger ones. They allow you to take and use that cash in ways that are far more flexible than your good old-fashioned IRA account that you might be used to, that you're supposed to invest in, like mutual funds, right? The self-directed allows you to invest in actual real estate, in other valuables and collectibles and investable things, and importantly for this conversation, loans. You can lend it to other people. So just know that is a viable option and a means that a lot of people have used to greatly accelerate the growth of their retirement accounts by using the self-directed retirement account that allows you to make loans and invest directly in real estate. If you want more information about kind of how that works, circle back, drop us a question. We'll reach out and ping you and get you contact information if you want it, for some of the services that we know of and where you can get more information on it. But let's say you're going to do that and you have money either in your IRA or under your mattress or wherever it is. One of the first things we think people need to know if they are going to consider lending money to someone else is kind of what we're talking about, what private or hard money lending is. I don't like to get hung up on the term hard money. It's an old banker's term. It doesn't mean anything. It's got nothing to do with ease or difficulty. There's nothing hard about it. It's probably one of the easier transactions you might have, given the amount of money and what you're doing with it. So I usually refer more to this act as private lending, meaning it's not coming from a traditional lender, a traditional brick and mortar bank. The money is normally coming directly from individuals through an individual. A guy with a name like Mark or Danielle or Chip is providing you money instead of walking into a bank somewhere, filling out some forms with a banker type person and waiting for a bank to issue you a loan. So they're private and they are for commercial purposes. And we'll kind of talk more about that in a second. But the loans are for the purchase and renovation or rental of real estate. You can maybe make loans for other things, possibly. I don't know. Don't have any experience with that. Only with real estate. We like real estate because it's real and it's a hard asset and it will have value. And as long as you have lent out less money than that asset is worth, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape as a lender. We'll get more into that in a second. But the big disclaimer here, and maybe other investors or lenders in the room can back me up on this, is that these are commercial loans and commercial notes. You are not lending money to someone who is going to live in the property that you are giving them the money for. That would make you a mortgage maker, and that is not what we're doing. We are not making mortgages. We are making private loans that happen to be secured by real estate. And the distinction is huge, because if you give someone money or lend them money for their personal residence, you fall under all manner of other regulation that you probably are not licensed for and prepared for. Mortgage acts and RESPA and TILA and all kinds of other laws regulate the lending of money to people for the roof over their head. So make very, very clear and distinct understanding and purpose of the loan, that it be for a commercial money-making investing endeavor. Does that make sense? And does anyone that has any experience with this have any opinion other than that?
Matt, this is Sri. Hope you're doing good.
Hey, Sri, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good. So this, what you're talking about only applies if you're originating the loan. But if you buy an originated loan, which was originated by a bank, it doesn't matter if it's owner occupied or non-owner occupied. I have more than 75 notes in my portfolio right now, which are owner occupied. And I'd rather prefer that than actually non-owner occupied, because my notes are in 35 different states. I don't want to write to 35 different states if I have to get back the property. So it's much better to have an owner occupied, because there's financial equity, which is, what is the fair market value, or what is the LTV? Based on that, you have the financial equity, but the more important part is you have emotional equity for the borrower.
Sure.
So, yeah, what you're saying is true, as long as you're not originating the loan.
Really good point, Sri. And those who don't know, Sri does invest a lot in notes. Great resource for that. If you haven't already done it, make sure you drop your contact info in the old chat box there, so people can follow up with you on that, because I know you like talking about notes. So real good distinction to make there. You can purchase residential mortgages. That is entirely different than actually lending the money out, right? And private money and hard money gets sold to other people. That was the point that Chip was making earlier. There are lenders who exclusively make these loans and then sell them to someone else, even though they're investor rehab loans. That's totally fine. And again, totally fine to purchase a loan or a mortgage that on someone's personal property that is their residence. You just don't want to lend them money for their personal residence unless you are a mortgage broker or a mortgage banker. And if you are, you already know that. But if you're not, again, please do not lend money to someone for a house that they say, oh, I'm going to live in it and fix it up and then sell it. Can't do that. That is against several laws unless you are properly licensed and set up to do that. And then, as always, consult with an attorney on your laws that affect what it is you're looking to do. All right. So if that all makes sense, then what else do you need to know? What are the things that you need to consider before saying, I'm going to go lend money to an investor to go tear a house up, hopefully add more value to it, and then sell it for enough money to make a couple bucks for themselves and pay me back? I believe you should have at least been somehow involved in the purchase, renovation, and sale of some real estate. You don't have to have directly, personally bought and fixed up and flipped a house, but you should have maybe at least partnered with somebody with your money so that you can see the process. So you can go into a house that is being renovated, so you can deal with a contractor, so you can have to pull those permits, so you can feel the weight of having to get your own money back out of a deal, so you can understand what that feels like and how that works and what the mechanics are of getting this done. So even if you haven't done it yourself, I highly recommend that before you lend money to someone else on a rehab deal, you find a way to somehow get involved in one where you've got some skin in it, and you can be the partner, you can be the money partner of a deal. If someone comes to you looking for a loan and they don't have any equity at all or any skin at all to put in the deal themselves, and it's not, an abundantly foolproof kind of deal, then maybe you could suggest, all right, well, I've got some money, maybe this one we partner on and see how that goes, right? Partnering is usually a little bit safer thing for you to do than lending if you've not done it before. So that is kind of rule number one. Have done this before if you can help it. And then the second one is to understand the process of understanding the markets and understanding value. That is job number one as the lender, is to understand the value of the asset that you're lending on and how successful your borrower is potentially going to be, right? Danielle, I think you're probably in a good position to do that, having been a realtor for a number of years, right? All you do is look at houses all day and determine value. What other things do you do to determine value? How do you determine the value of a deal before you do it?
Well, at least part of my process and part of our investor team's process. And this is how we work with whether you personally are looking to be the party buying a flip property or an investment of some kind, or you're looking to invest in a project that somebody else is going to be predominantly project managing that. First, what we do is we look at the comps for the condition of the property as it is right now. And then we look at the comps for what it could be if we were to sell it and it's either new construction or if it's a major renovation, depending on exactly what you're thinking of doing. And we compare the two. We do what's called a pro forma, which is a full analysis of the full cost of a deal. And that includes carrying costs for how long do we anticipate that project taking, which in a market like right now is longer than it used to, for sure. How much is it going to cost to do that? And again, in a market like right now, it's costing a little bit more construction-wise because the costs of certain materials and things have gone up. We help our clients analyze what's it going to take to do the project, what are all the numbers looking like, what is the profit margin or approximate percentage, and is that a comfortable level to be able to move forward with the project. So then we would help you purchase that and then help guide you through that process. So if you're looking to invest in one of those projects, and if, just like Mark was saying, if you're looking to get involved, if you want to partner with someone, or if you want to invest in someone else's project, I'd really encourage you to reach out to me via email, because I'd love to partner you with other people that are looking for other partners. So happy to help matchmake on an individual level. And of course you could do your own due diligence, see whatever you'd be interested in. But I would be happy to help there. But in terms of the analysis, doing a full pro forma, understanding what you're getting into at the beginning, and always estimating it at the worst case scenario, not the best case scenario. If you like the margins, when you're like, okay, if this was a complete dumpster fire, would I still be happy I made this decision? That's when you know that you should probably be moving forward with the deal.
Yep, it's a risk assessment, right? You're doing a risk reward analysis on this deal as the lender, not as the investor. Investors are by their nature optimistic people. We think every deal is going to be great, right? So you cannot take your optimistic go-getter lender's opinion only on what the after repair value of their deal is going to be, which brings up another question. Chip, if the mic is hot, do you run appraisals on your loans?
Generally, no. Generally, we're doing exactly what you're talking about here. And we're doing it a couple ways. So we're going to run a lot of that analysis ourselves. But a lot of times when a borrower will come in, it's important to get insight on what their methodology is, because you want to make sure how they perform on the outset is how they're going to perform during the loan. So if they just took a really half-baked slat at here's what it's worth today, here's what's going to be worth as improved, and here's the budget I just wrote up in 30 seconds without giving any forethought, how are they going to apply that to the actual transaction? So what you want to see is that they've actually thought through and say, look, I got a split foyer in Vienna. It was built in 1966. In the last 120 days, there were 3 trades. One was in excellent condition. It sold for $749. One was a B condition. It sold for $715. And one was whatever. And there's an analysis and there's some forethought into here's why we think we can get what we can get. And it's sort of a tell. If they do that kind of diligence on the outset, they are probably more likely to apply the same kind of effort throughout the project.
100%. Even though you as a lender may do all of your own due diligence, you should, you need to, you must do your own, but you also want to know what your borrower has done.
Yeah.
And what kind of
you need to know that they know.
Right.
Right. That's important.
Yeah. You want them to come to you with their idea first. You tell me what you think of this deal. Then you take a look at it, right, and vet the accuracy of what they've proposed, right? Right,
exactly.
Okay, makes a lot of sense.
And it's really smart as a potential borrower to not only do your own analysis, like you don't have to do that in a vacuum. Really reach out to other people that you work closely with. Definitely if you have an investor agent who knows how to help do pro formas properly, who can also help you with comps and very strategically show you a full scale, like a much wider scale of all of the comps in the market. Lean on them. They want to help you, and make sure that you're not afraid to reach out for help when working on this. It really does take a village to get these projects done, and that's why we have Grid. You know, one of the big reasons we have that.
Right.
And so the reason that I asked about the appraisal bit is because you can, as a lender or a private person, get an appraisal done on a property that you are considering making a loan on. They do cost money, into the hundreds of dollars. They do take time to have done and get back. They are sometimes more accurate than others. There is some value there, but I believe nothing beats the value of being able to run your own comps, understanding how to comp a neighborhood based on a home's age, location, school district, all the other good things that you'd want to know about a house if you're going to buy it yourself. You need to know how to use to determine proper after repair value so that you can know what a safe loan is going to be. Another big factor in understanding what a safe loan is going to be are the renovation costs. A big thing you need to understand is hopefully how to, if not do your own estimate, at least know when you're looking at a good estimate of renovations. So when someone is coming to you proposing to borrow some of your money, one of those key components, in addition to where's the house, what do you think it's worth, and what do you need to do with it, who's going to be doing the work, how much do they say it's going to take to do, and show me your estimate for that construction cost. And then understanding how to review those estimates and understand if someone is proposing a fair, reasonable estimate amount of work and cost of work and scope of work and schedule of work for the project that needs to be done. And so that comes back again to experience. If you've done a few of them, you'll have a better sense for what a good contractor's scope and estimate will look like, what a reasonable schedule is, close to what reasonable costs are. Back, Danielle, to your point earlier, right now costs are rising. That is the thing that you need to know. Materials costs are going up. Permits are harder to get, just get now, period. So timelines are stretched a little in getting projects done. And those are things that you need to be aware of. Ways to do that: hang out on deals, get some projects, come to groups like this and ask people what their experience is, get to know contractors that do that kind of work. If you don't know anyone else, ask me. And find out what it really takes to properly estimate the renovation of a deal and what a good estimate looks like, so you can know if your borrower is working with a decent, diligent contractor. I think we'll come more on that will come up in a second. The next thing to know how to do is how to pull and review a credit report. And maybe this would be a good time to talk a little bit more about one of Shad's questions from earlier, about underwriting and the actual process of underwriting a private hard money loan, because not every lender does pull a credit report. It's not necessarily an absolute. Some people say your deal is your credit. If you've got this house at a screaming good deal and there is almost no way that I can lose money on it, I don't really care what your credit is. I have never taken that opinion. Anytime I've ever lent any money, I've wanted to look at a credit report because the main job of a credit report is to tell you what someone's history has been in paying other people back for things. If I am going to give you some of my money, I want to know how and how long and how good you have been at paying other people back their money when you have borrowed it. And it is something that you should, I think, take into consideration. You absolutely need to factor it in to your risk reward calculation. What am I going to earn on this loan versus the risk that I'm taking by lending it to someone? And then the ability and likelihood of that person to pay you back. That is exactly what a credit report tells you. So it does have meaning.
Get those too. You know, there's websites where you can make a contingency of the borrower paying for that, much like the appraisal Mark mentioned earlier. You can ask the potential borrower to pay for that, just like you would in a residential loan. You know, if you getting a mortgage, you pay for that on your own. And that's you usually get that back within the credit reports, usually like instant or within a few minutes. And there's a couple different websites that we can email out after this, after our live and everything. We can email out a couple of options. Typically, I believe it's anywhere from $35 to like $60, and sometimes it even includes a background check. But really, that option costs extra, and it's probably not necessary.
Right. But very similar to the process of vetting a potential tenant if you happen to be a landlord and you're looking for a tenant. Same thing. You want to know what the credit history is and the likelihood of being paid your rent, same thing being repaid your loan. And so what I like to tell people is your credit's not everything, but it's a thing. And it doesn't mean if you have 400 credit, you won't get a loan. But it is a thing that your lender will want to know. And if I know that you've had trouble in the past paying people back, that might be a consideration both for the cost of the loan, certainly for the amount of leverage you're going to get, and possibly for the request by a lender to say, okay, I see what you've got. It's fine. We can still get you funded. I'm still willing to lend you money, but I might ask you if you've got another person, another partner, another someone else that might also be willing to help guarantee this loan with you to say, I will also make sure that this loan gets repaid. Doesn't necessarily have to cost you anything as the borrower or investor to have a partner or find someone else that's also willing to back that loan that does have better credit. Anything over 700, 750, probably not a problem. That person is good enough to sign for any loan that's a reasonable loan, a reasonable leverage, and an otherwise reasonable deal. But you'll have to determine for yourself as the lender at what point below that, below good credit, below excellent credit, are you going to ask for more? Are you going to charge more? And at what point are you going to lend less, wanting more security and safety and margin in a deal if your borrower has less than stellar credit? So just a thing to keep in mind and a thing to always, I think, do and consider if you're going to lend somebody money, especially I think if you're going to get started in lending. Always pull the credit report. Don't take anybody's word. Oh, it's fine. I got you. I've always paid for gas. Get it in writing on a credit report before you lend anybody any money.
Can't hurt to check.
Right. And then the last thing, structuring payment terms to provide adequate security for the loan. Just in brief, that might mean if you're considering lending to someone that's got a house that they're going to renovate, it's probably not worth the same amount on day one when it's got a hole in the roof and a leak in the basement and 1960s shag carpet than it's going to be after they've renovated it, right? So day one, you might not want to lend all of the money if you're willing to give someone the maximum amount of leverage that you're comfortable with. Still not a good idea to give that leverage out on day number one when the house is still in need of renovation. That's why we talk about things like construction holdbacks and draws. We talk about that, I think, a little bit more here in a minute. But structuring payment and repayment terms is an important part of it. That is where you should also be getting the advice of an attorney who's probably drafted documents like that before. That'll come up in a minute too. And if you need any of those, again, you've got a network, reach out, right? So let's talk real quick about that process of creating a loan and what the documents are, what you get, what risk you're taking, and how you can protect yourself from that risk. The documents that go along with a private or hard money loan are very similar to what you may have seen if you've borrowed money for any other kind of house, like your own personal residence. Promissory note, which defines the term of the loan, how much am I giving you, what is the interest rate, what are the repayment terms, when do you have to start paying it back, what happens if you don't pay it back, what defines a default, who is going to guarantee the loan, that type of thing. Basic terms of the loan are covered in the promissory note that says I'm going to borrow it and then I'm going to pay it back. The commercial loan agreement is the thing that says you're going to be using this money to acquire an investment property and says if anything should go wrong, I'm pledging that investment property as collateral to repay that loan. which means, I think, exactly what you think it means. If the loan is not repaid, there should be a deed of trust that assigns the rights of the lender to a trustee, usually an attorney who represents the lender, that would give them the right to foreclose and take the property back if the loan is not repaid. And the foreclosure process, very similar to what you may think it is or be aware of for a personal residence. You would file the notices, you'd send out demand letters. If your borrower goes into default, that reasons for default should be laid out in the loan agreements. And once the borrower is in default, you can put them on notice. If they haven't cured that default within a certain period of time, that again is all built into your loan docs. You would be able to have your trustee pursue foreclosure by advertising the property for sale at an auction. Doesn't have to necessarily be down in the old courthouse, but you can take the property to auction if your loan is not repaid on time, to have the property sold either to the highest bidder, at which point you get back the proceeds from that would pay you back. If there are proceeds in addition to that, they go back to the borrower. Or if there is no one willing to pay what you are looking to get, at least what you're paid back or what you set at the auction, you take the property back. And you, as the lender, now would own this property with the ability, with the right, the requirement, the necessity perhaps, to complete renovations and sell it for yourself or sell it directly to someone else. Again, I would suggest that at no time should you have more money lent against the house than it should be worth at any given minute, accounting for some extra time and hassle and cost to go through the process of foreclosure if you needed to. It does take time, it does cost money, and those things need to be baked in there as well. So that needs to be part of your plan for how much to lend and when to lend it, such that if at any given time things go wrong, a borrower decides they don't want to do this anymore and they just quit answering the phone and go away, that once you go through the process of doing what you need to do to foreclose and either take the property back or get it sold, that you will be repaid at least as much as you're owed. Relatively straightforward, but all of those things need to get thought of and defined in your loan docs, and that all gets baked into your loan amount and that loan to value amount that you have to determine based on what you think the house is worth now, while it's under construction, and then when it's done. So keep all of those things in mind.
Any questions on that so far? I know we're trying to keep the pace going for tonight, and a lot of that was some pretty juicy stuff, but does anybody have any questions?
I don't have a question, but I do have a suggestion.
Yeah.
That's right.
Or comment. So Mark, you talked about when the borrower goes delinquent and going to the foreclosure route, right? One of the things that I do, either owner occupied or non-owner occupied, is I actually give them an option of deed in lieu of foreclosure. Let's suppose you really like the property and you don't want the property to be bought out by somebody at the auction.
Mm-hmm.
So if you communicate with the borrower, hey, sign the deed over to me, which is deed in lieu of foreclosure, they assign the deed over to me in return that you don't actually file a foreclosure against their name or their entity. Then you get the property back. I've done that in a couple of properties in Bay Area right now. So.
Great point. You do not have to go through the full process of foreclosure if your borrower says, hey, this isn't working. I don't want to do this anymore. I want out. Sri, you make a very good point. The option in most cases of a deed in lieu of foreclosure where the borrower voluntarily gives up the house is an option, and it does happen, and it's usually cheaper for everybody if that house is roughly worth about what's owed on it at the time, and it makes sense for you as the lender to take it back, and it makes sense for the borrower to just give up and not let it get sold and try to recover any money that they might have in it. You can work that out. That's where Sri, you come in. You do all kinds of working out of stuff. So stay by that microphone. You got all kinds of good ideas. So all these documents then should be drafted by a real estate attorney on behalf of the lender, and beauty of all beauties, you don't even have to pay for it. Borrowers almost always pay for the lender's docs to be prepared on the HUD when they go to buy the property. You just work that out as part of your deal. Hey, totally happy to fund your investment deal. My guy's going to have to put some docs together, regular lender type of stuff. He charges $650, $750, $1,000, $2,000, whatever you negotiate, whatever you think is reasonable and makes sense for everybody, and it normally gets paid on the HUD. But $1,000 for your first set of docs done by a good attorney is not unreasonable for you to expect to pay, and not necessarily unreasonable for you to charge your borrower, as long as the rest of the loan makes sense for you and for them. So get your documents prepared properly. All right, so that lender safety net, if the loan is not repaid for the terms, similar process to a traditional bank foreclosure. And as long as the property is worth more than the loan, then you should always get your money back. Not necessarily immediately, so we can talk about that and how long it might take in different jurisdictions and at different times. This is also a really good time to mention that I believe there are still foreclosure moratoria active in most areas, right? Who's got insight on that?
I have 26 loans right now stuck in moratoria. Some of them are in Illinois. Maryland is still stuck. I have some in Prince George's County, some in Howard, some in Baltimore County, where they're not letting me get a judgment day or actually get a foreclosure sale date established. They're letting you do everything else, but they're not letting you establish a sale date. So
how about Virginia? Sri, do you know offhand if Virginia?
Virginia and the 3 counties, they're letting me go. So actually the one in Front Royal, I think I talked to Rob about that. I'm actually foreclosing on December 3rd, first week of December. I don't know the exact date, but okay. I'm going to sell.
Okay. So foreclosures are happening in Virginia, in Northern Virginia.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, obviously I don't have notes in all counties in Virginia.
Yep.
But the counties that I have, they are not stopping. They are letting you go.
Okay.
Maryland is a different situation.
Okay. Big takeaway there, though, is that under normal circumstances, you can foreclose everywhere. Every county in every state of the country just about follows the rough outline of real estate and contract law that would allow you to foreclose. But right now, because of the pandemic, at any given time, there are states and counties that have moratoria in place where you cannot foreclose. And it sounded like I heard you say there are a couple of counties in Maryland in this area, and perhaps Baltimore City, where those moratoria are in place and you cannot foreclose. You must give the borrower more time to work out.
If I'm not wrong, I think the Maryland governor actually passed the moratoria across the state.
Yeah.
So I need to double check that, but I think it's a statewide thing, not specific to a county.
Okay. So that's a thing that is worth knowing. It's certainly worth knowing, depending on where you might intend to do your lending, and based on what you think is going to happen over the next 3, 6, 9, or 12 months, vis-a-vis economic activity and pandemic relief and relief bills, may impact those laws and that foreclosure ability. So while it is typical that you have the right of foreclosure as the lender to say, okay, I've given you enough time, you had ABC things that you were supposed to do under the terms of the loan and you didn't do them, now I am going to force the sale of this property or try to take it back myself in order to get my money back. You may not be able to do that the same way today as you could have before February of this year, and that you might be able to do tomorrow, depending on how your particular jurisdiction is handling the foreclosure process right now. So that is definitely a very fluid situation and just something to be aware of.
But Mark, when you're looking at this, you're looking at it from the standpoint of being a commercial lender. So that property is not going to be owner occupied. So that moratorium probably doesn't apply to you if you're the hard money lender.
Well, that's a real good point. I don't know. Does anyone know that for sure? Chip, what do you think?
So the short answer is that's absolutely correct. I do think it differs per jurisdiction.
Okay.
Virginia has been very pro-lender. So if you had a project in Virginia, you could probably push it through very quickly, as was discussed by Shri earlier. DC and Maryland are a little bit different. There are legal proceedings, but I'm seeing them get lifted, and they're not under the same kind of restrictions as an owner-occupied residence.
Okay. Well, that's the point that we're making in this slide right here. Is you need to know where you're working and what the laws are in your area. Generally speaking, in this area, yes, Maryland and DC are more borrower friendly, right? Whether it's a traditional mortgage or a commercial loan, it takes longer to get through the system, to get through the court system in Maryland and DC versus Virginia. And there are things that borrowers can do to intentionally slow down that process, right? Bankruptcy being the main chute that can get pulled that slows things down. And depending on where you are, that can add lots of time to the process of working out your now bad loan. So be aware of those things. Not a reason to not do it, but it is a reason to be very aware of the laws in the jurisdiction where you intend to do your lending. Oh, and yeah, by the way, another good reason to check credit, right? You won't be in this problem usually if you've checked credit and you have a good credit borrower you know cares about their credit and their credit rating and wants to do everything they can to pay their loans back and work things out. All right, so let's talk turkey. Typical lending terms, and I call them typical lending terms. There is no such thing as a typical loan. There is no typical hard money or private loan. It is literally whatever you negotiate. Technically, it's a private loan if you get the money from your uncle at no interest at all, and you can pay him back. If he makes you fill out all the paperwork to make sure that you do pay him back and that he could take the house if you don't, that's still a private loan. It just has no interest, and it's very borrower friendly. Assuming you don't have a wealthy uncle though, and you're going to borrow from anyone that maybe has done this before, or if you're considering doing it yourself, you should be able to charge money for your loan. And so when I say typical loan terms, it'll be whatever you negotiate, but I don't think it's insane to suggest that for the sake of borrowing someone's money to do something like buy a house that has needs, fix it up, and then try to sell it for a profit, charging an annualized rate of interest between 8 and 12%, not crazy. See that all the time. 1 to 3 points, 1 point being 1% of the loan, right? So a $100,000 loan that has 1 point attached to the cost of the loan is equal to $1,000. 70% loan to after repair value max as the maximum loan amount available after the house has been fixed, right? You can lend more, you can lend 100%, you can lend 110%. If someone has absolutely stolen a house and has it under contract for $200,000 and you know all day long it would sell as is for $6, that's pretty rare, first of all. I've never seen it, but if it happens, you're taking no risk whatsoever, fine. You can lend a little bit more than that. But usually most loans and most deals that you're seeing in this area are going to make the borrower in a good case scenario $10,000 to $200,000. And so if a deal has $10,000 to $200,000 in profit and equity in it, you should be looking at a no more than 70%, I suggest, loan to value maximum if you are the lender. You want to do a dozen of these, get really good at it, and start raising your leverage a little bit if you think you fully understand the market and your borrowers, great. You want to lend less than that, totally fine. This is your risk. This is the risk you're taking as the lender, and the less you loan, the less risk you're taking that should something go wrong at any given point in time, borrower gives up, you have to figure it out, that you get your money back. But that's your real safety net, is how much you lend versus what you believe the after repair or current existing value of the house is, right? That I think should sound logical. Danielle, have your loans typically involved holdback of any kind for construction?
One, yes. So we did it as a construction draw. And then as construction progressed and things were either permitted or whatever inspections were completed then, or whatever project, say it was, they were installing one specific room worth of things, like, or they were completing a kitchen install or a bathroom install, we distributed based on that. I've only done that once though, only because it is time consuming. So as an investor, it is a lot more manual. That doesn't mean it's worse, better or worse. It's just, it's something to note. Your time is worth something. So you should keep that in consideration. But if you have some concerns about that borrower or the contractor that borrower is working with, or the process or their organization, or any of the other things we talked about as risks earlier, it might be a smart way to go to kind of be a fail-safe for yourself in protecting your money and making sure things progress in a time, not just a timely manner, but also in a very productive manner. So I've only done that once, but has anybody else done that where they've done it more in a draw schedule? I mean, there's a lot of more commercial, like larger commercial hard money lenders that do that. Say like Washington Capital Partners, for instance, that would be an example of one.
Yeah.
If you left money on the table.
Yeah.
You left money on the table.
If you're looking for maximum leverage, you should expect to not get it all on day one. So to keep the math easy, if I'm going to lend you $1 million and I've got a 70% loan to value max, that means if you have a house that's worth $1 million, I will lend you 700,000 ultimately, but not on day one, because this house that you're going to sell for $1 million, you might only be buying now for 500. I don't need to give you 7 if you only need 5 on day one to buy it, fix it up a little bit, show me that you've taken some of the money and used it to fix the house up, improve its value a little, then I'll give you a little bit more. All these things are, by the way, again, determined by your docs. It's not just made up on the fly. You should have that construction draw schedule in there, along with the scope of work and price agreement from the contractor. Here's what you're going to have done by X date. Once you get it done, give me a call, take a look, or I'll have somebody go look, or send me a video, send me a photo, find some way to establish that the work has been done. Great. You've gotten through demo, you can have another 10 grand. You've gotten through drywall, it means you've got your inspections to close in. Great. I'll give you another 50 grand, whatever you work out. But typically you're not going to give your maximum loan all on day one. Hold something back. That's why it's called a holdback. So another typical term that you might see is some prepayment of some things at funding. So, Greg, I'm going to loan you this money for 6 months. You're going to pay me $2,000 a month in interest. And by the way, I'm going to hold back 2 months of that. So if you're paying me $2,000 a month, that's $4,000. I'm going to hold back as a prepayment. It just reduces the lender's risk is all that is. And it's getting a little bit fancier maybe than you need to for your first loan in the way of doing holdbacks for things. But just know that it's not uncommon to say, I'm going to hold back some prepayment of some of this interest. And it just reduces the amount of money that you're lending, which increases your return and reduces your risk.
Hey, Mark.
Yep.
But Lee, I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
Well, the first, Mark, I don't know if you were going over to the next slide, but the first thing that I would say is make sure you're in first trust position, right?
Very good point.
Yeah, that probably ought to come up. Yeah, real good point. So what does that mean, Lee, to anybody that doesn't understand the difference between first trust and anything other than first?
So that means that you're going to be in first lien position. Anybody who's hired in you would have to pay you off in order to be able to get access to their money, right? So you always want to be in first trust position. I know and have heard of people doing hard money in a second trust position, but that doesn't make much sense to me because the property is going to be in a state where it's not livable for the first, well, for the most part, and if you're doing a really good flip. But I would say that the first part is going to be first trust position. This is where when I was doing hard money loans, I never went out of first trust. I didn't do seconds, I didn't do thirds, etc. But the point that I was making for Danielle is that hard money lenders make their money up front, right? So if you are able to get into first trust position, I would also say that so that you are in more control of the deal, you probably want to make the loan for the renovation as well and put that on the draw schedule, because where does a hard money lender make their money? They make it on points. So if I'm charging 3 points, right, it's multiplication, it's simple math, right? The larger that loan is, right, the more money I'm getting up front, but I also have control because now I have a draw schedule where I'm paying off that money as that construction timeline comes through. So I would say, try to get the renovation loan as well.
Yep. So the only caveat I would add to that is, since we're talking, I think, to potential first-time lenders, if you've done a bunch of loans, you get that. You're right. You understand about position. Of course, you want to be in first. You want to get the largest loan, make the most money. That's great. But a lot of people do start their careers in lending by not being in first position. If they know somebody that's got a deal, they've gotten their main loan from somewhere else, but this deal still needs another 50 grand to get done. I see those things happening. That is oftentimes someone's first technical private loan. All right, I've got 50. I don't have 500. You've got 500 from somebody else. Cool. I'll give you the last 50. But just understand that that means you are not going to be in first position. And that doesn't matter until there's a problem. And when there's a problem and people aren't being paid back and loans go into default, and heaven forbid someone does have to start a foreclosure proceeding and a property gets sold in foreclosure, the lender in first position gets paid first, right? With all of the proceeds from the sale until they're fully paid off. Once they're fully paid off, if there's anything left after that, you go to the guy in second position, and then you start paying off their loan. Third position, same thing. You're getting paid after the first and second person have been paid back all of their money. Then you can start to get some. So Lee, to your point, you are taking definitely more risk usually on a loan if you're not in first position. Doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't do it. But again, you just need to be aware of what kind of leverage this person is borrowing. What does it need? And they may just have had a first trust lender that didn't want to lend them very much. Maybe that's all they had. Maybe that's all they were comfortable with. Maybe they only lend 50%. You can still lend the next 10 to 20% and still be reasonably safe, but you're not in first. So that means if something does go wrong, you're only going to get paid after the first trust lender does, which means you should probably be charging a little bit more than you would if you were the first position guy, because you're taking a little more risk, and everything should be based on risk and priced on your risk. So if you're not the first loan in first position, you need to know it, you need to consider it, and you probably ought to be charging something for that additional risk beyond what you would if you were the first lender or the only lender.
Hey, Mark, quick suggestion, right? So if you really are short on capital, in the sense you don't have a whole lot of funds, generally happens with individuals who have jobs and they have IRAs, they change the job and they are with a self-directed IRA custodian, right? Yep. What you could do is you could actually buy a partial. What that means is, let's suppose a loan has an amortization of 30 years. And there was a loan mod or whatever, and the loan was restructured to be 30 years. And make sure that the borrower has paid at least for a year, 12 months, 9 to 12 months. So they have some kind of payment history in place. Then what you could do is to buy the whole loan. Let's suppose it costs you $100,000 for the whole 30 years. You could, but you only have 20,000. What you can do is you can buy from the second year to the sixth year. You're only buying the partial payments instead of the whole loan. It's called a partial purchase. So then what happens is you are still in the first position, because for the first 6 years, you have the right to foreclose on the property if the borrower doesn't pay, right? But you still get the benefit of being in the first position. Obviously, this is not an hard money loan. But that's what I do for my investors who have smaller IRAs. So they buy the partial payments depending upon how much capital they have. But they have all the rights of how a regular lender who gave the loan for the whole loan term, but you get the front portion. But if you actually look at it in the amortization schedule, the most part of the payments in the initial years is going towards the interest rather than the principal. So your rate of return is much higher than what the note rate is. But it's a little bit left field, but
yeah,
Tree, that sounds a little dicey, because if I'm looking to get in first trust position, you're talking about I'm factoring someone else's payments.
no,
How am I protected?
You didn't get it. You become the lender from the year 2 to 6, or whatever, depending upon the amount that you want to put in. So you're not in the second position. You are, for the years 2 to 6, you are in the first position. After the 6th year, the original who originated the loan will get into the first position. So for the year 2 to 6, the first lien lender does not have any position at that point of time.
And what does that pay? What is the average rate of return for a structure like that?
Yeah.
So it depends, right? So when you have a mortgage, you have a Schedule A, and you can do a Schedule B. So what you're doing is, after 1 year, whatever is the current UPB, and how I sell it is, hey, how much do you want? I have 20,000. I am okay with getting 8%. So what I'll do is I'll structure the note wherein from year 2 to year 6, they're getting 8%. The note rate might be higher than 8% or lower than 8%. It doesn't matter. You're still getting the 8%. You can structure it based on time value of money.
Okay, so sounds like
how is that
around
recorded?
8% is the thing that you see.
How is that recorded at the county?
It's not recorded at the county. What happens is you can record an assignment in your name. You can, but what happens is the servicer, it is with the servicer. But if you want to record it, you can record it. You just have to a little more tricky wherein you have to get the borrower's signature again.
Yeah.
When you do the partial.
Like a friends and family.
A little esoteric for our topic, but interesting. We're going to have you do a thing all on notes, Sri. We're going to have that alternative investments discussion again, and we can get more into that. It sounds like there's a couple of other ways to get into lending without directly lending money directly to a person that you know. All right, so
Thanks, Sri. That was very cool to listen to.
Yeah, he gets into some interesting stuff. But back to our regular private lending, any other terms that you can negotiate would be in there, right? Look up what confessed judgment is, personal guarantee. Personal guarantee is fairly straightforward. The person guarantees that if they don't pay you back, even if they borrowed from 123 Main Street LLC, I personally will pay you back from my personal assets if my deal doesn't pay you back. And again, anything else you can negotiate that makes sense and is reasonable and acceptable to the borrower and the lender. So without getting too much into this is just kind of an example of how some of the math would work. Trust me that the math is accurate and the percentages are what they're supposed to be. I'm going to try to skip ahead to tell you what you're going to make here. But if someone's got a house worth $300,000, they're going to buy it for $175,000. They say it's going to take me 6 months to get this thing fixed up and sold for $300,000. And I've got an estimate from a licensed insured contractor for $50,000 to do the work. What should you do in the way of a loan? I would suggest a 70% loan would be a max of $210,000 lent to that borrower. That means if you're charging 12%, you're going to make $2,100 a month in interest. If you were charging 2 points, that would be worth another $4,200. If you said, all right, I'm going to hold back some of that money in the beginning for prepaid points and interest, a couple of months of that's $8,400 in points and interest. All of that means the amount of money you're actually sending to the table on day one is $151,000. Your maximum loan minus the amount you're holding back for construction until they fix it up, minus any prepaid you're collecting on day one, means you're only sending $151,600. That is why Lee said you make your money at closing as a hard money lender. You are pretty well guaranteeing you're in a good position by collecting 12% on 210,000, but only lending 151,000 on day one, right? Fix it up, do a little more work, call me when you're ready. I'll come look at it, and I'll give you another couple of bucks out of that 50 while you're fixing the house up. So your borrower then is going to need to have their $175,000 purchase price minus the 151 I'm giving them on day one. That's $24,000. Closing costs, right? Every purchase has a cost associated with it. Going to be a couple grand there. About 28 grand in cash just to buy the house. To actually get the deal done, they're going to need that 175 plus the $50,000 in renovation, plus my $8,400 in prepaid points and interest that we're going to start paying on day one, plus those closing costs. So for a total of about $245,000 to get the deal done, minus my 210 loan, 35.8. So around 36 to 40,000 someone would need to have as a borrower to borrow my $210,000 and get this deal done. Why would someone do that? Let's take a quick look at how the numbers work out for everybody. That works out into this scenario that the borrower's loan would cost them $16,800. They would profit $40,000 after customary sale costs when they sold that house for $300,000. 16.8 sounds like a lot of money, except it's a heck of a lot cheaper than saying, hey, I got a deal. Hey, guy with some money, if you give me some money, I will give you half and we'll just split it. I'll bring the deal, you bring the money, and let's take half. Well, that means you're giving up more than $16,800. If this thing was going to make $55,000, $60,000, you're giving up $25,000 or $30,000 instead of $16,000 in change to borrow money. So while private money loans may seem expensive, they actually typically will make the borrower / deal maker a heck of a lot more money than if they just gave up half of their deal to a partner. But it's got to be fair, and it's got to make sense. And there is competition. A lot of people in here say that that they have made loans. So you're probably not going to get 25% interest. Maybe, I guess, if you can, and you can sleep at night doing that, good for you. But it's got to make sense. And I think that was one of the points that Chip made earlier. It really should make sense. This is not something you should be doing to try to squeeze 30% out of somebody. It's something that you should be doing because you like real estate and you like investing, you like helping people, you have the money to do it, and it is a good rate of return when things line up and your investor makes money, they have a successful deal, you make money. As Chip said, it develops into a partnership where if it works out, people come back, they do more deals, you make more loans, and you make more money. And by the way, doing it this way at that 12 and 2, you're earning an annualized rate of about 16%. And at that rate, you're going to double your money every 4 years if you keep it out, right? As soon as you get paid back, make another loan, lather, rinse, repeat. You can make very good money very quickly lending at just 12% and a couple of points on these average loans. So you don't need to kill anybody for usury and loan shark rates to do very well as a lender. It's why it's a great business. Anyone not agree with that? I hope that made some sense. Doubling your money every 4 years isn't a bad thing to do. All right, so then let's say you're interested in doing these. What are the things that you're going to want a borrower to do if they're asking for your money to go do a deal? You have skin in all your deals, Danielle? Have you ever borrowed 100% of the money that you needed for a project?
No, not that I can think of a time where I borrowed 100% of it, but I have borrowed quite a lot of it. Usually, I think the lowest I've ever had in terms of skin in the game was 10%. Of personal funds. And then I borrowed the other part as kind of a combination of hard money from a more kind of typical commercial lender, and then also kind of hard money or private money from another investor who ended up funding the construction portion of it. So what's really cool about this is someone looking to invest in this way, you can get creative. If somebody's already funded the purchase of the property, you can do something like just fund the construction, or vice versa. You can fund the purchase or the construction or whatever needs to be done on a specific project. You can also do both. You can fund all of your own projects. It's great because you can be quite creative and you can get involved in a lot of different types of projects, ones that are shorter term flips, ones that are longer term that maybe have higher interest yields for you. You really can customize it and invest in different types of projects at any given time based on what your investing goals are. Say you don't want to have all of your money out for too long. You may want to look to partner with someone who's doing a more cosmetic flip, something that might be done in, say, 4 months, where you might get paid back in 6 months. Or maybe you're looking for a higher interest yield and something you don't have to touch on too much. You may want to invest in a project that maybe will be a bigger, say, a condo conversion or some other type of conversion project that maybe will take 2 years, but you can get a higher interest rate. It kind of depends, and those are it's what I enjoy about being able to customize how I invest.
Yep. That all makes sense. But please hear me now and believe me later. If you take only 2 things away from this discussion and you are considering ever lending anyone money, one, always get a credit report and check it and see how your borrower has treated other people's money and their propensity to pay them back. And 2, make sure that your borrower has something in the deal. Doesn't even have to be their money. It can be their partner's money. It can be their family member's money, but it's not going to be 100% your money on your first rehab loan. There is a difference in attitude for a borrower who has some of their own money to lose in a deal versus one that has borrowed 100% of the money from you. Just trust me on that. No matter how good the deal is, for your first loan or 2, always make sure the borrower is bringing something into it. And if you're loaning at 70% LTV on the average kind of deal you're going to see around here, they're going to need to have some money. But even if they've stolen the house and you could theoretically loan 100% of the money and not technically maybe be taking any risk, make them bring some money anyway, even if it's 5 or 10% of the deal. Find it from somewhere, because if the borrower can't do that, I would suggest you're not a rehabber. You're a wholesaler. You should be wholesaling that deal or finding a partner or do something else creative to extract the value of that deal. Renovating takes cash. It takes some stick-to-itiveness that you need to earn by having your own money in a deal. So I know I'm going to get my money back because I know you want to get your money back out of it too. So always make sure there's some skin by your borrower in their loan. And then proof of funds. When you say, great, you're going to need $38,000 to do this deal, borrower, would you please show me a bank somewhere, a statement that shows in the last couple of weeks that money actually exists? Oh yeah, I got it. Great. Please, bank statement with somebody's name that matches a name that I've got on some paperwork that says that money is actually there. Credit application, you can take a regular old application and you can charge. This is going to take some of your time to look at somebody's deal. Most lenders, I would say, probably don't charge a lot of money for send an email and say, hey, I've got a deal, would you fund it? Kind of initial discussion. But don't be afraid. Again, it's anything that you negotiate to say, well, if I'm going to spend X number of days or weeks looking at this, or if I commit to funding it, and you change your mind, you need to pay me something for my time for committing funds and time to look at your deal. So an application, funding fee, that kind of thing, you can negotiate. What else? What should a borrower provide to consider a loan fully executed contract? I really like to at least ask borrowers, if they're going to ask me to look at their deal, have it under contract. But if it's a first-time borrower doing their first deal, that's what this group exists for also, right? We're always here to help. I just ask people to try to be respectful, not bombard us with a million things that maybe they could buy or maybe they're thinking about making an offer on. But that's where I think, Danielle, to your point earlier, find it someone else, an agent, another investor that you can talk to and go around with and look at deals that's helping you find and understand your deals. A lender is a good backstop for understanding your deal. If a decent, qualified, well-known, referenced private lender won't give you money for your deal, you probably don't have a good deal. So
Yes,
take that for what it's worth, but try not to waste their time either, because they'll eventually get tired of taking your phone call if you're just asking for deal checks and not actual loans. So I like to see a contract actually in hand, hopefully an estimate for the renovations from a licensed and insured contractor. See us after class if you need to know how to look up a contractor and find out whether or not they are actually licensed and insured. And then proof of insurance for the property always. That protects you as the lender as much as it does the borrower. Remember, it's your house if things go wrong, so you need to make sure that they have all of the proper insurance, preferably prepaid and in place for the duration of what you expect to be the loan when they go to settlement. So in case anything happens to the house, your collateral is protected. I think that's all I've got in the way of loan jibber jabber. What did I miss? Chip, what didn't I cover?
What questions do you guys have? Because we've gone off on some tangents tonight that ended up being like super beneficial and really interesting and unique. But Mark and I, we talked a whole lot. So what about you guys? Where are the gaps? What else can we help with?
So this is Chip. So the one thing that I would add is if you want to win the business of a customer, be able to compute ROI for them instantly. So in Mark's project that he outlined, the lender was going to make a 16% return. Well, you're going to hear some pushback from the borrower. I'm not paying you, whatever. They're going to hear that yield, and they're not going to be happy about it, and they're going to quote you a rate they got from somebody who's a lot lower. Well, on that analysis, they were going to put $35,000 into the project over the life of the project, and they were going to make 40. That's 114% return in 6 months. Annualized, it's 230% return. So if you can compute that for them, what I will typically do is come back and say, I'll tell you what, why don't you lend me the money at 16%? I'll make the 230. And why that's key is the bigger private lenders, they're going to have different requirements, different cash that it's going to need to be invested. So if you take that same return, they're going to make 40,000 and they're going to save a couple nickels on interest, but they have to put up 65,000. Well, their ROI went from 115,000 to 55%. So 55% is still good, but you're doubling their return on investment by giving them leverage. And that's what they want. If you find an investor that understands that, you win. If they're just looking at what's the cost of my loan, it's probably not your customer anyway, because there's always somebody that's going to be willing to give it for less.
Totally agree. Yeah, and that really is back to your original point of these need to kind of make sense for everybody. There are other people out here that are willing to do this, and if you want to do it, you're right. You need to consider the needs of your borrower and be a reasonable lender and a good source of information, and hopefully, as you said, a partner with your borrower on their projects and really in it for their success. And I know you are this. I think any good lender is a great resource for just that reason. You've seen a lot of deals. You've done a lot of these things. You know when something looks good or maybe not. And when your lender says, hey, did you think of ABC? They're not asking just for their health, right? These are things that you probably should be thinking about as a borrower. So that's what you want to be. You want to be that resource. And that it's helpful to have some experience doing some deals so that you can tell your investor, hey, looking at your budget here, you've got $2,000 for a brand new roof. Probably can't get a new roof for $2,000, guy. You need to know those kinds of things so that you can be a valuable resource. So
the other thing that I would add is I'm a big advocate of the face-to-face meeting. So you've got someone that's going to borrow under this $210,000 from you. Okay, it's a big tell when you meet them on the property side. Are they on time? Are they you're gonna read a lot from how they perform when they're coming to you to borrow $210,000. And sometimes it's the simple things. They're coming to borrow $210,000 from you, but they're a half hour late and they're on the phone the whole time. And you look in the back of the truck and it's a mess. Well, if they're not going to treat you like you're an absolute priority, well, what happens after closing? So it's just a little tell. And I believe the face-to-face meeting, you can learn so much more than you can looking at a piece of paper, because you're looking at personality traits, you're looking at their viewpoint on how they found them, and they're going to tell you a story, and that's great. And partially what you have to learn to do is ask some leading questions and shut up, because they'll tell you all about themselves, and you're learning what motivates them, what drives them, what is leading them to take this on, and learn a lot about what they've done in the past.
Chip, the old saying is, there's a reason why God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Right, and that can be hard for some of us sometimes.
Talking.
That can be hard for some of us sometimes, but it's helpful.
Yeah.
Just learn to just shut up.
So in the chat, Lee, getting back to you, I see you were asking about speaking about something. You said an alternative to this. I don't know if you mean an alternative to private lending.
It is private lending.
Okay.
So the reason why I initially said, and I'll take just 2 to 3 minutes, is I got into a hard money situation where I did get into a second position with a friend of mine, and the friend is no longer a friend, right? So I like to try and keep my friends and my business associates as business associates. So just from personal experience, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I would always say, treat this as a business, right? There are no friends, treated as a business. And if you have a friend who you don't want to lose as a friend, you probably want to just keep it casual. The other thing that I have is especially in our area, Northern Virginia, it's pretty hard. You got to have some buku bucks if you're going to be in the first trust position, because houses over here probably average $300,000 or $400,000. So if you're going to be a hard money lender in this area, you got to be coming to the table with at least $300,000, $400,000. So that's why when I started this about 3.5, 4 years ago, I wasn't in that position where I had $300,000, $400,000 in my IRA where I would be able to loan in first trust position. So I did what I did. I got burnt a little bit. I had to sue my friend, and it cost me about $10,000. But at the end of the day, I was able to get my money back. What I have done since then is I have done crowdfunding on a platform called Pure Street, right? And with Pure Street, right, I'm making first trust positions, but I'm making first trust positions with a whole bunch of other people. So if there's $100,000 loan, right, they may split that amongst 100 different investors at $1,000, well, $10,000, well, $1,000 a piece. Right? So you're all in first trust position. There's some French term called pari passu, which allows you to be in first trust position. The great thing that I like about using this platform, and it's just a personal advice of what I'm doing, is I don't have to run a credit check, right? The platform is responsible for that. I don't have to see a property. The platform is responsible for that, right? And I can tell you, I've been investing on this platform since 2017. I have never lost a loan. And I'm looking at my account right now. On one account, because I'm doing part of this inside of my self-directed IRA, my cumulative return is 30.8%. So that's the one that I'm doing with inside of my self-directed IRA. And the one that I'm using for personal funds, I can't get 8% interest at my bank. Right? The other fund, I'm getting 35%. So if you're interested, curious, this is what I've done. This is personal, stake in the game. Try out Pure Street. The only negative to this is that you have to be an accredited investor, but they don't always verify. So if you're not accredited and you just submit your name, etc., they may create you an account, but they may not, because they're going to verify you.
Okay. Yeah, there are definitely other platforms out there to do lending, and crowdfunding is definitely a thing. There have been some of them that have done better than others.
Oh yeah.
But always good to hear about somebody that's got experience with one in particular that may be worth looking into. So thanks for that. I know you've been doing that for a little bit.
If anybody check it out, any
Yeah.
questions, let me know.
Cool.
Thank you.
So
All right.
Tom Davis had a question. What book should I read?
Yes.
I don't know that there is such a thing as a book on lending. I'm sure there's probably a book on everything, but I think one of the more helpful books, if you're going to start lending somebody money, might be Flip, F-L-I-P, which is in the Keller Williams collection. A couple of investors out of Austin wrote it 10 years ago or more. And it is the basics, the nuts and bolts of
Andy's got it. He's holding it up.
rehabbing investing. There you go. That's what do you think, Andy? That's one of my favorite. It covers just about everything, right?
Yeah, Mark. This is from my one of my personal mentors.
Mm-hmm.
The book is Banker's Code by George Anton.
Okay.
You want to read that first, and the next book is The Debt Millionaire by the same author. But the Banker's Code actually gives you fundamentals of how you can how to increase your velocity of your money. So you want to start with Banker's Code and then go to Debt Millionaire.
Okay.
And don't forget about the Wealth Code as well. So George is out there. George has written 3 books, and George even has a company called Finance. Finance is F-Y-A-N-C, right? And I think he charges a subscription for like a year. He comes up with all of these debt hacks, right? As to different ways that you can make money. I put Debt Millionaire in there with George Anton's name. That's the first book that you're going to want to read on how to do this. You can actually read all of them in any order, but you have to really touch all 3 so that you have a full understanding of how you're making spreads or arbitrages and making money.
Okay. Which all is a good thing. I suggest, though, that if you are going to lend someone money on a house that they're going to fix and then sell, you should have that fundamental understanding of how that process works. And Flip is one of my favorite books for just have an understanding rehabbing, from developing comps and understanding after repair value, determining what repairs need to be done, understanding costs of those. So as a lender, you should know all of that stuff. So if there's everything in that book, great. Move on to the next one. Learn to get better at your lending, try different things, and increase your arbitrage. But if you don't know that, read that one first and know everything in that before you give your money to somebody. Loan your money to someone to renovate a house.
Sure.
All right, cool. What else?
Don't forget about our homie Non Lamb, right? If you ever want to learn this stuff in the local area, Jan is going to be a great resource. I did my first flip with him. I earned $43,000 on my first one. Mark told me to go and buy a Benz. I didn't. But yeah, he gives you back the money that you use for the class. So if you want to learn in real time and build out this circle of trust, which is what I did, call on Nan. He's a part of the CAZA Group.
Thank you for that.
Just put his name in the chat too.
Yep. Jan's a solid dude and a good friend of ours and our partner at Grid in Gainesville. You'll find him on Meetup and on gridinvestor.com.
Awesome.
So yeah, he runs a really good group and does a lot of training out of his group.
Sure.
Jan Lam Academy is him. Other questions? Anybody have any other questions about this particular topic? Questions about the State of the Union or politics? No. That was
That's how we kicked it off.
That was a joke.
All right.
You really scared Danielle with that one. I saw the look on her face. She was like,
"How'd you vote, Danielle? One more time, Danielle. How'd you vote?"
Very quickly. That's what happened. That's how I voted.
With crayon.
All right. So
I wish this was recorded, Danielle.
Was that my was this a pledge, like one of those like sorority things? Was
That's
this
right.
No, that was like you had your hand in the cookie jar.
Right.
Okay, Mark Beckett, I guess this is how we're doing it tonight.
That's right. So for this and more easy chat, see us here at Grid Investor.
Yeah.
But cool. Yeah. Anybody has other follow-up questions? Shoot us email. You've got Danielle's contact information there. Danielle at the CAZA Group. I am Mark at the CAZA Group. Rob is Rob at the CAZA Group with really complicated email structure. We're easy to find. And yeah, again, we'll be here maybe for another couple of these meetings and events. Typically in December, you may recall, a lot of times we try to have a party and like hang out. I don't think we're going to be able to do that. Probably not going to be legal anyway, even if we tried. So we might not be doing the holiday thing. We may do something else though for December. We're talking about it. We got to see if we can come up with something better than just a normal discussion to have a little more fun or entertainment. Maybe try to talk about deals and successes. I know a lot of people made a lot of good money this year on a lot of good deals, and everybody likes hearing success. So maybe we'll still have some kind of online deal off. Show us your HUD. And I'm coming up with ideas on the fly. Show us your HUD for your best deal of the year, and somebody will win something for having the best deal of the year. But wherever it is, here or in person next year or soon as we can, we look forward to seeing you there. And in the meantime, if you want to check us out on gridinvestor.com, you can do that. If you otherwise want to help us, help you, tell other people about this network, right? Get other people to join. I haven't charged you a thing. Join that Facebook group. Doesn't cost you a thing. And you know, show up. I think those of you that I've seen here a few times, I know are doing deals and making money. And if you're not yet, you need to talk to these other people enough to know that all you need to do is get over yourself, right? Back to Danielle's earliest point, there's always opportunity. You are your own worst enemy sometimes in not doing things. Hopefully we exist to patch some of those holes, fill in those gaps, and get you confident enough to be dangerous to do something. Take this information and do something with it. You will regret it if you don't, and you almost certainly will not if you do. There's just too much knowledge in here for you to not get what you need, learn something from it, and hopefully be successful with it. So that's what we want for all of you.
Yeah, don't hesitate to reach out, guys. Feel free to email Mark or I. And if you have a specific question, we are, one, happy to help you with those questions. But two, if you're looking to connect with a mentor, if you're looking to connect with somebody else on something specific that you need for a specific deal or to learn something, let us know. We'll connect you with someone in Grid. We love to matchmake, and that means a lot to us. Also, if you would like to be part of our Grid Ambassador program, just like our good friend Lee here is going to be helping us with in the very near future, please do reach out to me and or Mark and or Rob as well. And we'd love to talk about how you can participate in that. But it's already 9 o'clock, which is insane. But thank you guys so much for participating. This was a wonderful conversation, and I can't wait for next month. We'll keep you posted on exactly what we're going to do to celebrate the end of the year and how we're going to kick off 2021.
Good deal.
Awesome.
All right,
guys.
Have an
thanks,
awesome
everybody.
night, everybody.
Have a great night.
Bye.
See you soon.
Bye, guys.